The collapse on Kessith Prime happened without warning. One moment, Nyla Vess was scanning for mineral deposits in Section K-47's older tunnel system. The next, the world was falling. She ran, but not fast enough. A support beam caught her leg, pinning her to the ground, and then the rocks came down in crushing waves. When the dust settled, she was trapped in a small cavity created by the beam's angle, barely enough space to breathe, let alone move. Her long Tethrani ears, usually her greatest asset for detecting acoustic signatures, now registered every terrible sound. Settling rock, creaking supports, distant rumbles that suggested more collapses could follow. Her communicator was smashed. Her portable lamp flickered and died. She was alone in complete darkness with tons of rock above her. Nyla knew the protocols. Deep tunnel rescues took days to organize, heavy equipment, structural engineers, careful debris removal to prevent secondary collapses. And that was if anyone realized she was trapped. She'd been working alone, hadn't logged her location because she was just doing a quick preliminary scan. Nobody knew exactly where she was. Hours passed. Maybe days. Time lost meaning in the dark. Her legs screamed with pain. Her mouth went dry. She started accepting this was how it ended, alone in darkness, crushed beneath a mountain that didn't care whether she lived or died. Then she heard it. The distant sound of someone moving rocks. Not machinery, too irregular, too organic. Just steady, methodical work somewhere above her position. She tried to call out, but her voice was weak, and the sound didn't carry through meters of debris. She kept trying anyway, because what else could she do? Connor Hayes had been mining Kessith Prime for 7 years, long enough to know the tunnels intimately and to have survived 3 major collapses. When the ground shook and emergency alarms screamed, he followed standard protocol: immediate evacuation to surface. But something bothered him. The collapse hit Section K-47, and Connor remembered seeing a Tethrani surveyor heading that direction yesterday, young woman with typical long ears, carrying scanning equipment. He mentioned it to the response coordinator who checked logs. No official entry for K-47. No registered workers. Must have been someone from another company, the coordinator said. They'd do a full sweep once the area was stabilized. Probably tomorrow. Connor tried to let it go. Probably the surveyor was safe on surface. Probably. But his instincts, honed over 7 years underground, were screaming that someone was trapped in K-47. And he knew what official rescue operations meant. Committees, assessments, safety reviews, equipment scheduling. All necessary. All time-consuming. If someone was trapped, they might not have days. So Connor did something spectacularly against protocol. He gathered his personal equipment and headed back into the tunnels. Not through official access points where security would stop him, but through maintenance crawlways he'd used for years. He reached the collapse site and stared at the devastation. The tunnel was completely blocked, meters of debris, unstable and dangerous. This should require heavy machinery, structural engineering, a full rescue team. But Connor was already listening, his ear pressed to rock, waiting for any sound that suggested life beneath the rubble. And then he heard it, faint, desperate, barely audible. Someone was alive down there. Connor started moving rocks. The work was brutal, methodical, terrifyingly slow. Connor couldn't just dig straight down. The debris was unstable, and removing the wrong rock could trigger another collapse that would kill both him and whoever he was trying to save. He worked carefully, testing each stone, removing smaller pieces first to create stability, constantly listening to how the pile shifted. His hands bled. His muscles screamed. Every rock he moved revealed 10 more needing removal. Hours passed. His lamp batteries started dying, but he'd brought spares. He rationed his water. He talked while he worked, partly to keep the survivor calm, partly to keep himself focused. Still here, still working. You're going to be okay. Just hold on. Deep in her prison of rock and darkness, Nyla heard fragments. A voice, maybe. Steady rhythm of work. She was hallucinating, probably. But the sounds continued, and gradually she realized someone was actually digging. She started calling out with renewed desperation, her voice raw but stronger now that hope had reignited. And impossibly, the voice above responded, "I hear you, keep talking. Help me find exactly where you are." Nyla talked, rambled about anything and everything. Her work, her family, her fear of enclosed spaces that she'd overcome to become a surveyor. The terrible irony of being trapped in the exact thing she feared most. And the voice above kept responding, kept reassuring her, kept working with steady determination. Connor triangulated her position from her voice, adjusted his excavation pattern. He was getting closer. The sounds were louder now, her words more clear. But he was also exhausted, his hands torn and bleeding, his body running on adrenaline and stubbornness. He broke through to her cavity after 7 hours of continuous work. His lamp illuminated Nyla's face, dirt-covered, tear-streaked, her long ears flattened with pain and relief. She was pinned under a support beam, her leg trapped, surrounded by precariously balanced debris. "Hey there," Connor said, his voice hoarse. "I'm Connor. Let's get you out of here." Nyla managed a weak laugh that was half sob. "You're insane. Coming down here alone." "Yeah, probably, but you're worth it." Connor assessed the situation. The beam was too heavy to lift alone, and debris around it was unstable. He couldn't use power tools. Vibration could trigger another collapse. This was going to require hours more of careful work, stone by stone, creating enough space to free her leg without bringing the pile down on both of them. The final stage took another 4 hours. Connor worked with aching precision, removing rocks around the beam, building temporary supports from debris, creating just enough space for Nyla to pull her leg free. He shared his water, talked to keep her conscious, and absolutely refused to acknowledge how close to collapse he was himself. Nyla watched him work with growing awe. This stranger, this human who owed her nothing, was destroying his hands and risking his life stone by stone, hour by hour, with patience and determination she'd never witnessed. When he finally asked if she could try moving, Nyla discovered her leg was numb but possibly not shattered. With Connor's help and excruciating effort, she pulled herself free. They weren't safe yet, still trapped in the cavity, surrounded by unstable debris. But they were mobile together, and Connor had already planned their exit route. He helped Nyla climb, supporting her weight when her injured leg failed, talking constantly to keep her focused through pain. They navigated through spaces he'd created, squeezing through gaps, climbing over precariously balanced stones. Every meter was exhausting. Every movement risked triggering another collapse. But Connor's 7 years of tunnel experience guided them through, and somehow, impossibly, they emerged into an intact corridor 3 sections over from the collapse site. Surface control picked them up immediately. There was confusion, questions about how they survived, demands to know why Connor ignored evacuation protocols. But there was also overwhelming relief, and when the medical team saw Nyla's injuries, serious but survivable thanks to Connor's quick extraction, the questions became secondary to treatment. Nyla spent a week in medical recovering. Her leg required surgery and extensive rehabilitation, but she'd walk again. The first thing she did when cleared for visitors was demand to see Connor. He showed up looking exhausted and uncomfortable with attention, his hands still bandaged. "You're insane," Nyla told him again, but this time there was no fear in her voice, only gratitude and something deeper. "You could have died. Should have waited for the official response team." Connor shrugged. "They would have taken days. You didn't have days." "How did you know I was there?" "Instinct. Saw you heading toward K-47, and when the collapse hit, something told me you didn't make it out. Couldn't just leave you." Nyla stared at him with her long ears angled forward, profound respect. "You spent hours moving rocks by hand, alone, in unstable tunnels, to save someone you'd never even met." "What else was I supposed to do?" Connor asked, genuinely confused by her awe. "Leave you to die because rescue protocols are slow, That's not. He struggled for words. That's not how things should work. But Nyla realized something profound. Connor didn't save her for reward or recognition. He saved her because leaving someone to die when he could help was simply unthinkable. That kind of quiet, stubborn decency, the willingness to spend hours doing back-breaking, dangerous work because it was right, was something she'd never encountered. Over the following months, as Nyla recovered and returned to work, she and Connor developed a deep friendship built on those hours in the dark. She learned about human culture, about Connor's philosophy that actions matter more than words, that showing up matters more than grand gestures. Eventually, their relationship evolved beyond friendship into something neither expected but both valued. A partnership built on trust earned stone by stone, hour by hour, in darkness where Connor proved that salvation comes not through grand, heroic moments, but through patient, stubborn refusal to give up. Years later, when Nyla was a senior surveyor and Connor had moved into safety training, they told the story to new miners. About the collapse in K-47, about the insane human who spent 11 hours moving rocks by hand, about what courage and devotion actually look like when stripped of drama. And every time Nyla told it, she remembered the moment Connor's light first broke through into her darkness, and his voice saying, "You're worth it." Not because she was special, not because he expected anything in return, but simply because to Connor, every life was worth 11 hours of bleeding hands and aching muscles and patient, stone-by-stone determination. She'd been trapped between rocks, watching death approach. And Connor freed her, not with machinery or technology or easy solutions, but with quiet devotion of someone who refused to leave anyone behind. Sometimes salvation comes one stone and one heartbeat at a time. And sometimes the bravest act is simply showing up and not giving up, even when everything says it's impossible.